My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 36, and last Thanksgiving, my father looked me dead in the eye and said, "We used your savings on better kids." He didn't blink. My mother smirked. My stepbrother kept chewing. But as the room went still, my grandmother stood pointed at them and said, "Then name those kids." What they didn't know was that I'd already uncovered the fraud they tried to bury, the renewed power of attorney, the credit cards opened under my name, the loan I supposedly guaranteed, and the $4,800 clinic charge they hoped I'd never trace. And that was only the first secret. Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever trusted the wrong people just because they shared your last name. What happened to me didn't just drain my savings. It exposed exactly who my family really was and who they never planned for me to become. I didn't grow up in a house that screamed or slammed doors. Ours was a quieter kind of dysfunction, the kind that seeps under the skin because nobody admits it's happening. My mother, Sandra, liked to tell people we were disciplined. My father, Richard, liked to pretend every problem could be solved by ignoring it. And me, I learned early that responsibility fills whatever silence parents leave behind. One of my earliest memories is the garage on a winter morning when I was 10. The air smelled like cold metal and gasoline. The lawnmower had died halfway through the yard, its engine coughing like it was begging for mercy. My dad handed me a screwdriver and said, "You're good with your hands, figure it out." He wasn't joking. He wasn't teaching. He was delegating. The blade slipped while I worked. A flash of pain cut across my forearm, sharp, bright, shocking. Blood welled instantly. I remember staring at it, waiting for him to rush over or ask if I was okay. He didn't. He glanced at the cut and said, "It'll toughen you up," before walking inside. I wrapped my arm in an old t-shirt and finished the job. That thin scar still runs along my arm, a reminder of exactly when I learned my place. Things shifted when I was 13, the year Sandra remarried. Her new husband brought Aiden, only a year older than me, but loud enough to fill every room. He came with designer sneakers, stories about being misunderstood, and a habit of making minor inconveniences sound like tragedies. Sandra adored him instantly. "My sweet boy," she'd say, brushing his hair like he was carved out of porcelain. She called me the reliable one, praise that felt more like a job assignment. The first Thanksgiving after they moved in, Aiden complained the turkey skin looked creepy. Sandra handed him a slice of pie to keep him happy. When I reached for a bite, she smiled tightly and said, "Dinner first, Ethan." It was the first time I realized effort didn't matter here. Noise did. Christmas made it clearer. Aiden got a tablet still in its glossy packaging. I got a heavy sweater from the clearance rack, a bright red discount sticker still stuck to the sleeve. Sandra kissed my cheek and said, "Practical gifts mean more when you're mature." I was 15, not 80. So I adapted. Not by competing, that would have been pointless, but by shrinking, by staying quiet enough to keep the peace. Silence became armor. Then Lily was born, my little sister. I was 16, old enough to know exactly what it meant when a baby cried in that house, but she didn't cling to Sandra. She clung to me. Tiny fingers around my shirt, soft breaths against my chest. When the house got loud, I took her outside. When Aiden threw a tantrum, I carried her to the backyard swing. She was the first person who needed me for love, not convenience. By 18, I was working 2 jobs, bussing tables after school and stocking shelves at night. I'd come home reeking of onions and mop water. Every paycheck went into a joint family account. If I asked where the money went, Sandra sighed like I'd offended her. That money helps all of us. Don't be selfish. When I enlisted in the Air National Guard at 19, Richard handled the paperwork. He filed a power of attorney just in case. I didn't read the line-by-line details. He was my father. I trusted him. I didn't know it would outlive the emergencies it was meant for. Training changed everything. The first time I sat in a cockpit, the world below felt small. Every problem, every slight, every moment I swallowed made sense. I wasn't powerless, just misplaced. So I made myself a promise I'd build something better, something protected, something no one could call family property. That promise became the Sky Reserve Fund. 10 years of overtime. Holiday flights, missed birthdays, nights sleeping in airports, Money meant for Lily's future. My future family, my peace. I didn't know the breach had already started. I didn't realize how early the cracks began, not until much later. Betrayal doesn't show up all at once. It slips in quietly, disguised as help or family decisions. Looking back now, the signs were everywhere, but I was too used to carrying everyone to notice who was riding on my back. The first crack showed up when I was 22. I'd just come home from a long training rotation. My uniform still smelled like the desert sun and engine oil. I planned to buy a used car so I wouldn't have to borrow Richard's truck anymore. When I checked my savings, a few $100s were missing. Not enough to panic, just enough to tilt my stomach. Sandra told me she'd borrowed it for groceries. She placed a hand on her chest like she was confessing something holy, but her voice stayed perfectly calm. "It's just flexible money," she said. "Family money is flexible." I told myself it was fine. People needed to eat. That's what I thought back then, that necessity justified access. The second crack came the next year during one of Aiden's many entrepreneur phases. He'd tried flipping sneakers, then reselling crypto gadgets, then a subscription box for high-performance lifestyle gear. All of it failed within weeks. When I saw a charge for packing supplies on my card, I confronted him. He smirked and said, "Relax, Ethan. Mom said you wouldn't care. You make pilot money, dude, pilot money." As if that meant endless. As if effort didn't exist. I should have shut everything down then, revoked access, set boundaries. But I didn't. I still believed that if I stayed calm, they'd respect the difference between support and exploitation. I was wrong. Then Lily got older. That's when the fractures turned into structural damage. She was 19 when she told me she'd been accepted to flight school. We sat in my car outside the regional airport. The evening light turned the tarmac gold. She held her acceptance letter with shaky hands. "I'll figure out the money," she whispered. "I'll take loans. I'll work extra." She said it like pain was inevitable, like she expected rejection. I told her she didn't need loans, that I'd take care of it. She cried the way people cry when something heavy finally lifts off their chest. That moment alone made every red-eye flight worth it. I didn't tell our parents right away because I didn't want their shadow over something so pure. But eventually, Sandra found out she always found out. Her reaction was a mix of pride and insult. Finally, she said, "You're using your money for something meaningful." Then she added, "Just be careful. Girls get distracted. Careers don't matter once babies come." I let the comment slide, but I felt something cold move inside me. Not anger recognition. That fall I paid Lily's deposit directly from the Sky Reserve Fund. I'd spent a decade building that account. Every dollar in it had a story: thunderstorms diverted over Kansas, delayed flights out of Newark, sleeping in airport chairs, holidays spent on the runway instead of at home. I thought they respected that. I truly did. But the final warning sign came in August. I was between flights in Phoenix, dry heat, jet fuel, the metallic scent of AC vents. My phone kept buzzing 6 missed calls from Lily, 2 from Grandma, 1 from an unknown number, and a text from Sandra: "Call when you land." Nothing major. Nothing major meant something massive. Lily's voice cracked when I finally reached her. "Aiden helped me at the registrar," she said. "He said you told him to handle the tuition for you." My whole body went still. "Handle what he already paid it," she whispered, "from your account." In that moment, the world didn't crash. It tilted, like stepping on a stair that isn't there. "My account," I asked. "The Sky Reserve Ethan. They said you gave them your login because you were flying." Jet engines roared in the background, but all I heard was the years of trust collapsing inside my chest. I told Lily I'd call back. I didn't want her to hear my breathing shake. When I finally logged into my account, the balance was wrong. Not slightly wrong, devastatingly wrong. Transactions for preschool tuition, consulting fees, vendor holds business expenses, late fees, and a $4,800 payment to a private clinic I'd never heard of. Something inside me went quiet. Not shock, not fury, just clarity. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a miscommunication. It was a breach, a deliberate one. That night at the crew crash pad, I laid out every printed statement across the table like pieces of a puzzle, each one a betrayal with a memo line. That was the night I realized something else. Something darker. This hadn't been a single theft. This had been practice, a pattern. And Thanksgiving would be the day I ended it. The days after Phoenix felt unreal, like flying through clear air but sensing turbulence ahead. You can't see it yet, but your instincts tighten. That's what my life became, holding my breath, waiting for the next hit. It came faster than I expected. The morning after I returned from the crash pad, my phone buzzed with an automated alert. New account added to your credit file. I wasn't opening anything. I wasn't applying for anything, and yet there it was, a card under my name tied to a billing address that wasn't mine. I called the bank. The representative's tone shifted the moment she pulled up the account. "Sir, this was opened using documentation we already had on file for you." My stomach dropped. "What documentation? Power of attorney," she said. "Signed by your father." My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles went white. I'd revoked that POA years ago. I asked for a timestamp. It had been renewed 6 months earlier, the same month Aiden's last business venture collapsed. I didn't yell, didn't curse. My voice went cold flat, the tone I used when an engine indicator blinked at 28,000 feet. "Freeze every card connected to that document," I said. "Yes, sir." The first escalation had begun. I drove straight to my parents' house. Sandra opened the door with that soft smile she used when she knew she'd done something wrong but planned to talk her way out of it. "Sweetheart, you look tired. Want coffee?" I stepped inside. Why did Dad renew the POA? She blinked, once guilt irritation calculation. "Because emergencies happen," she said, "and you're always flying. Somebody has to manage things. Manage what our family's needs." "Needs," I repeated. "Or debts." Her face twitched. Before she could spin a story, Aiden strolled in wearing designer joggers and a hoodie that probably cost what I spend on groceries in 2 weeks. "Yo," he said. "Did the bank call you? They freaked out over nothing." My jaw clenched. "You opened credit under my name. It's a family plan. It's fraud." He scoffed. "Relax, dude. You act like you're broke." His tone carried something worse than disrespect entitlement. Then Sierra walked in holding a ring light. She looked me up and down before smiling like she pitied me. "Ethan," she said, "you're blowing this way out of proportion. Sharing credit helps everyone. You're supposed to uplift your family." I stared at her. "You used my account for your consulting business. It's not a big deal. You charge $600 in business essentials." That was the laptop, she shot back. "The one in your Instagram story?" Her face froze. Sandra clapped her hands lightly, her version of restoring order. "That's enough. We all support each other. Your money flows where it's needed most." A slow burn started behind my ribs. "My money," I said. "Not yours. Not his. Not theirs." Richard walked in from the backyard, wiping his hands like he'd been solving a problem instead of causing one. Sonny said, "You're making this bigger than it needs to be. You renewed a revoked POA." He shrugged. It was convenient. For who? For the people who needed help. There it was. The truth stripped bare. Every one of them saw me as infrastructure, the plumbing behind their comfortable house, working, silent, invisible until it stopped functioning. But the next escalation didn't come from the credit issue. It came from Lily. That evening she called me, voice small. "Ethan, Mom asked me to sign something." My chest tightened. "What kind of something?" "A payment authorization so they can handle my tuition if you're flying." My blood ran cold. "Did you sign it?" "No." I got scared. "They said you told them it was fine." "I didn't. I know. That's why I wanted to call you first. While I was patching holes, they were digging new ones. I told her not to sign anything, not to agree to anything, not to let anyone near her financial documents." She sniffed quietly, embarrassed. "I don't want to be a burden," she whispered. "You're not," I said. "You never were." But even that wasn't the lowest point. The next morning, my phone rang again. Unknown number. "Hello, Mr. Carter. This is Little Pines Preschool. We're calling about the upcoming tuition installment." "I'm not the payer," I said immediately. "Remove me from everything." "Oh," the woman stuttered. "You're listed as the primary. Not anymore. Check your email in an hour." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Not in fear. In anger sharpened into something precise. I realized then this wasn't miscommunication. This wasn't confusion. This was a system. A pipeline made from my silence. And every person in that house was drinking from it. I thought that was the worst of it. But the real escalation, the one that changed everything, came from a place I least expected. My grandmother. That night she called and said quietly, "Ethan, Your mother did something like this before. And for the first time since Phoenix, I felt something deeper than anger, dread. Grandma's voice stayed with me long after the call ended. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't vague. She was deliberate, like someone choosing each word with surgical precision. Your mother did something like this before. That sentence lodged itself under my ribs like a shard of glass. I tried calling her back, but she didn't pick up, which meant she'd already said more than she intended to. And if there was one thing I knew about Evelyn Miller, it was this. She never revealed a secret prematurely. If she held back, the truth was explosive. But I didn't have time to dig into it yet, because the next escalation hit before the sun even rose. At 6:12 a.m., my inbox pinged with an email from a debt collection agency addressed to Aiden. At my email, using my name as the guarantor. I stared at the screen, unable to process for a second. Then the heat rose through me so fast I actually had to put the phone down. He had listed me as guarantor for one of his failed entrepreneur ventures, without asking, without telling, without shame. The email said payment was overdue, 4 months overdue. I called him immediately. He answered on speakerphone, the clatter of video game buttons echoing in the background. "What's up?" he said casually. He put my name on a loan. There was a pause. Not guilty, just annoyed. "Oh, that... Chill, bro. You have good credit. They wouldn't approve me without it. You forged my information. Mom said you'd be fine with it." There it was again. Mom said. "Aiden," I said, voice low, controlled. "Pay it now." He scoffed. "Relax. I've got this. I'm working on something big. His delusion hit me harder than his fraud." "You don't have it," I said, "because if you did, collectors wouldn't be calling me." He hung up on me, so I escalated. I forwarded the email to Grandma. 2 minutes later, she replied, "I'm coming over." But before she arrived, another blow landed. Sandra showed up at my crash pad unannounced. I opened the door and she walked in like the place belonged to her. Her perfume filled the small space, instantly floral, invasive, cloying. "Ethan," she said, "we need to talk about your behavior." My behavior. "You're making everyone uncomfortable. Your brother feels targeted. You're speaking to him like he's a criminal. He committed fraud." She waved her hand as if fraud were a minor inconvenience. "Aiden is under stress. His business is finally taking off." "Which business?" I asked. "The sneaker one, the crypto one, the consulting one, or the mystery one that needed a loan he couldn't pay." Her lips tightened. "You're being cruel." "No, I'm being factual." Sandra stepped closer, her voice lowering into that scolding, guilt-laced tone she'd perfected over the years. "You have always had so much, Ethan. A good job, opportunities, discipline. Aiden wasn't raised like you. He needs support. Then he can get it from the parents who worship him." Her expression hardened. "You owe us respect. I owe you nothing you haven't earned." She tried a different tactic, the one that always made her feel righteous. "We took care of you," she said. "You managed me." I corrected. "There's a difference." She froze just for a second. Then she hissed, "If you turn on this family, don't expect us to stay by your side." I almost laughed. They were never on my side. Before the argument could deepen, Grandma knocked. Sandra straightened, forcing a smile. "Mother, we were just..." Evelyn walked right past her. "Leave," she told Sandra. "Excuse me, you heard me. Leave." Sandra's face flushed red, but she left. The moment the door shut, Grandma sat on my couch and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. "She's doing it again," she said. "Doing what?" Her fingers trembled slightly as she folded them in her lap. "When you joined the Air Guard, Sandra kept some of the benefits paperwork for herself. She told the bank she needed access in case you were deployed. She kept renewing that access long after she lost the right. I told her to stop. She didn't." I felt my heartbeat in my throat. "So she's been controlling my finances for years?" "Yes," Grandma whispered. She told herself it was for the good of the family. My stomach dropped. "Is the clinic charge connected?" Grandma looked away. "I don't know, but she's hiding something." Before I could ask more, my phone buzzed again. A message from Sierra. "We need to talk. You're making things difficult." Another from Richard. "Your behavior is unacceptable. Family comes first." And then another email from the preschool. Please confirm your involvement in the Brooks Family Scholarship application. Scholarship. They had used my name to apply for aid, as if I were the children's legal guardian. That was the moment something inside me locked into place. I wasn't dealing with accidents. I wasn't dealing with misunderstandings. I was dealing with a coordinated system of entitlement built on my silence. So I stopped being silent. I documented everything: screenshots, emails, debt collector messages, bank statements, POA records, Sierra's credit applications, Aiden's loan, Sandra's forged renewals. A pilot doesn't panic in turbulence. He stabilizes. For the first time in my life, I wasn't stabilizing them. I was stabilizing myself. And without knowing it, they were building the perfect storm that would blow up at Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving Day felt colder than it should have. Denver mornings usually have a soft bite to them, but that day, the air cut sharper, like it knew something was about to break. I landed from a red-eye just after sunrise, the cabin still clinging to the smell of recycled air and burnt coffee. I showered at the crash pad, changed, and picked up the black folder I'd prepared, thick with printed statements, highlighted memos, and evidence that could shatter a family. When I pulled up to my parents' house, everything looked painfully normal. Frost on the driveway, a wreath on the door, kids' laughter echoing from inside. For a moment, I wondered if I was overreacting, if maybe I'd find some reasonable explanation waiting for me inside. Then I stepped on through the door. Sierra was filming a holiday gratitude vlog, waving her phone around the kitchen like she owned the house. Aiden was sprawled on the couch, in socks, with holes in the heels, scrolling through his feed like this was his kingdom. The twins were running circles around the coffee table, nearly knocking over a paper turkey centerpiece. Sandra was fussing over the table, humming like she was starring in a commercial for World's Best Mom. Richard carved the turkey with surgical precision, as if angry poultry was responsible for the tension in the room. And Lily, sweet, anxious Lily, sat near the end of the table, hands twisted in her lap, eyes flicking toward me like she was silently asking if she was allowed to breathe today. But it was Evelyn's stare that stopped me. She sat in her usual chair back, straight hands, folded eyes, sharper than I'd seen in years. I placed the folder on the table, not loud, not dramatic. Just enough for the binder clip to click against the wood like a warning shot. Nobody noticed. Not yet. We lined up for dinner, plates steaming, forks clinking, the smell of gravy and roasted turkey filling the air. Then Richard cleared his throat. A small thing, but I'd flown long enough to know that small things can precede disaster. Before we eat, he said we should update Ethan since he's here. I paused with the gravy boat in my hand. Update me on what? Sandra smiled, that bright, rehearsed smile she wore whenever she was about to say something unforgivable. We used your savings on better kids. The room didn't go silent. It collapsed. I felt everything inside me still, the way turbulence feels right before a drop. Better kids, I repeated softly. My voice wasn't angry. It was empty. The twins giggled at a video on Sierra's phone. Aiden kept chewing. Richard didn't blink. Sandra smirked like she'd finally said what she'd always meant. Then Grandma Evelyn pushed back her chair so hard the legs screeched against the floor. She stood like a judge, rising to deliver a sentence. Name those kids, she said. Her voice cut through the room like steel. Right now. Richard stiffened. Mother, name them, she snapped. You said better kids. Say who is better than him. Sandra's smile collapsed. Mom, please. But Evelyn raised her hand, and the room obeyed. I reached into the folder and pulled out the first page, a bank statement with red circles across line after line of theft. These, I said, sliding it across the table, are the transfers you made from my Sky Reserve fund. Sandra's face paled. Ethan, don't do this. I placed another page on top, the illegal POA renewal. This is the paperwork Dad submitted after I revoked his access. Richard's jaw tightened. It was for emergencies. I laid down the preschool invoice next, then Sierra's consulting fee, Aiden's credit card charges, the vendor holds, the overdue loan, every lie printed in ink. Sierra's phone lowered slowly. Aiden's chewing stopped. Lily covered her mouth with shaking fingers. But Sandra? She went defensive. Of course she did. We did this for the family, she said. You're single. You have no children. That money helps the little ones. The little ones, I said, aren't the issue. The liars are. Richard slammed his hand on the table. Watch your tone. We raised you. No, Evelyn snapped. You used him, you drained him, and you justified it by calling it love. Sandra glared at her own mother. How dare you take his side? Evelyn stepped closer, leaning on her cane. I know what you did before Sandra, and if he files charges, I'll testify. Something cracked across Sandra's face. Fear, recognition, guilt, all tangled into something ugly. I pulled out the clinic bill, the one with no explanation. The one tied to something they never meant for me to see. What is this? I asked. Sandra swallowed. It's complicated. That's not an answer. Richard's voice sharpened. Drop it. I won't. Silence gripped the room. Even the children sensed it. Then I said calmly, the same voice I use when I announce turbulence to passengers. You have 30 days to return every dollar. If another cent moves from my account, this becomes a police matter. Aiden scoffed. Bro, chill. It's just money. It's theft, I said. Sierra crossed her arms. You make so much. Sharing won't kill you. Silence will, I replied. I gathered the papers back into the folder, clipped it shut, and stood. Lily, Grandma, come with me. We're taking a walk. When I come back, I expect a plan. A real one. Not manipulation packaged as family values. I walked out into the cold air, feeling it hit my lungs like clarity. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being controlled. The cold outside felt different after that confrontation, cleaner, sharper, almost like fresh air hitting a cabin after the pressure equalizes. Lily walked beside me, wiping her cheeks with her sleeve, embarrassed to be crying. Grandma Evelyn held onto my arm steady despite her age. The three of us circled the block in silence, the crunch of frost under our shoes, the only sound between us. You handled that like a pilot, Grandma finally said. Calm, she added. Precise. I wanted to yell, I admitted. Yelling is for people who don't have the truth, she replied. By the time we returned to the house, the temperature inside had changed. The noise was gone. The chaos was gone. Even the kids were quiet. Richard stood by the sink, arms crossed like he was bracing for impact. Sandra hovered near the stove, her face, stiff fear sitting right behind her eyes. Aiden and Sierra were nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in the car. Or filming something fake for her followers. I didn't sit, didn't soften. 30 days, I said. First wire by Friday. Richard's jaw flexed. Fine. Sandra tried to speak, but Evelyn cut her off. You'll remove his name from the preschool, she said. Today. And you'll stop touching what doesn't belong to you. For the first time in my life, my mother didn't argue. Not out loud. Her silence said more than words ever could. That night after driving Grandma home, I sat alone in my car with the folder in my lap. Every page still felt warm from the confrontation, but one in particular wouldn't leave my mind. The $4,800 clinic charge, a private facility, no service listed, paid in full. I typed the address into my phone again, needing to be sure. It wasn't cosmetic. It wasn't urgent care. It was a long-term hormone treatment clinic, quiet, discreet, expensive. And Sandra had reacted like someone terrified of being discovered. They thought stealing my savings would weaken me. They thought breaking my trust would break me. They thought lying would keep me confused. But they'd just handed me the one weapon they never intended me to hold, a truth they've spent years burying. A truth only Grandma seems ready to talk about. And this story, it's nowhere near finished. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, hit subscribe. Stories like this don't resolve in a single dinner, and mine definitely didn't. There are still debts to be repaid, boundaries to enforce, and a clinic bill that opened a door my parents never meant for me to see. And if you've ever been the one who carried everyone else's weight until your knees almost buckled, stay with me. The quiet one doesn't stay quiet forever. This story isn't over. Not even close.